Okay, we're back. I have discovered that the pause button on my video camera does not work very well. So if I'm asking you to pause the video, if I need to take a moment to write things on the board, it's just going to jump to a new video. If it's something where I can just sort of stand here and you can pause and then turn it back on and I'm still here, then it can be in the same video. Okay, all right. So I completed the table of values here. So I got 3 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, and 7 pi over 4. Got my work written down right here. Wrote pi is 4 pi over 4, just always found a common denominator of 4, which made it possible to subtract that pi over 4. So now I'm ready to graph. So I want to be plotting these x values with these y values. Now in thinking about this, I need to start at negative pi over 4. Now I know that negative pi over 2 would be my first negative quadrantal angle, and negative pi over 4 is just halfway in between negative pi over 2 and 0. And if I think about it, I got all of these values by just starting with these values and subtracting pi over 4. So I'm just always going to be going that distance to the left of my quadrantal angles. So that will give me pi over 4. This distance to the left of pi gives me 3 pi over 4. The same distance to the left of 3 pi over 2 will give me 5 pi over 4, and then 7 pi over 4. And then attached to these values, at negative pi over 4, we're at a high value of 1. At pi over 4, we were at 0. 3 pi over 4, negative 1. 5 pi over 4, 0. And 7 pi over 4, back at 1. We play connect the dots. And you can see that what we've done is just shifted everything pi over 4 to the left. It's a little bit surprising because we were adding pi over 4, and I tend to think of positive as moving to the right, but I have to remember that when I'm changing the x value, I've got to solve for x, which involves undoing whatever we did to x. So it's going to have the opposite effect of what it might look like I would have. We call this a phase shift. We've done a phase shift pi over 4 units to the left. So when you're giving a phase shift, you can always give the amount and then the direction. That's usually how I'll ask for it. Okay. Now, this didn't affect the period. The period is still 2 pi. Notice the period is not the ending point, because this graph doesn't really have a starting and ending point. It goes on forever and ever in both directions. The period is the distance between the ending point of one period and the beginning point of that same period. So 7 pi over 4 minus a negative pi over 4, that would become 8 pi over 4. Yeah, that's just 2 pi. We didn't stretch it or shrink it at all, we just shifted it. Similarly, the amplitude is still 1. We didn't do any vertical changes at all to this graph. Okay, so that finishes up our horizontal shifting of things. In the next video, when you come back, we'll start putting things together and doing more than one transformation for the same graph. Okay? See you then.